Do you hear me? Do you got me? And that's a condensed version of what we went through. But it's just adding to the point that you need to protect your money. And like I said earlier, in order to do that, you have to educate yourself. And for Jehovah's Witnesses, two ways. You got to figure out what you think about it. What you think positive or not, and how do you go about changing it? And then you have to educate yourself on, okay, where do I want to put this money? Do I want to put it in real estate? Do I want to put it in, the traditional stocks? And, you hear a lot of talk about Tesla. You guys heard what happened with GameStop. Where do you want to put this money so that it grows? What is the strategy? What is the plan? And I have to stress that because, like I said, that's hard for us, for those of us who grew up in this organization. Planning something out for a few years, 10, 15, 20. I couldn't do it. Maybe you guys are different, but I just couldn't see it. And I think that was really the main reason for me going through $60,000 in a year with nothing to show for it to this day. To this day. And it's also the other reason, I told you I tried to step out on faith and work on my dream. And that's the moment I realized that faith has nothing to do with what you're chasing. Faith is useless. And from then on, I threw that out the window. I've thrown faith out the window. I realized it was just a church or a Christian or Jehovah's Witness thing. And that is the only place that it works. The only place. You have to make smart, sound decisions with your money and protect it and to educate yourself. And I'm almost certain, it was kind of like you said, right? It's the way we've been using our thoughts is wrong. And that applies to not just Jehovah's Witnesses, but across the board. If you're not in the right frame of mind, even if you're doing the work, because I went through that stage too, right? Where you're doing the work and you're putting in all this work for this stuff and you're not getting the results. It's because something in your head, and he said this before in another video, that the reason you're working so hard and not getting the results is because you inevitably have a program in your mind that doesn't support what it is you're trying to get. AKA, I'm trying to get this money, but the Jehovah's Witnesses taught me to abhor money, to hate money, it's detestable, we don't need it, the world's almost over, so on and so forth. You got me. But on the flip side of all this, and trust me what I'm about to tell you, when you start, even at the beginning, when you start flipping your thoughts about, not even going to say money yet, when you start to change what you're focusing your mind on, when you start to change your self-talk, like he said, well, how am I going to do this, to, we have these options, these are the ways that we can do this, everything changes. And at first, for me, it was an amazing thing to watch, that because you've been stuck in this negative mindset for so long, good things could be happening to you, and you're still waiting for it to go wrong. And inevitably it will. But that's how, I guess that's another form of cognitive dissonance, right? I've been so used to the bad that when the good comes, I'm still believing in the bad. It's another form of it. And then it takes you some time. It took me a couple of years to figure out, wait a minute. This chick actually took out her 401k and gave it to me so I can, because there was somebody who was around then, and she went and took out her 401k because she saw what I had been through with the family and my dad and what happened with the first set of money I lost. And, as I started fixing how I thought about things, one day she came on and she said, hey, you know what? I'm going to take this money out of my 401k and give it to you. And I couldn't believe it. And I never took it because my belief that this was happening to me was, I couldn't believe it was happening. And then the negative side started to kick in, and probably some fear too, right? The negative was like, this probably won't work out like it did the last time. I immediately went back to what was familiar, which is normal when you're trying to change a belief system or change anything. When it starts to get scary and you start to get results, you kind of go back to where it feels good and feels safe. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with money. That's the other part that, we weren't taught. Maybe other settings, other families outside of this organization, but we weren't taught about that responsibility that comes with money. And especially if you, and I hope I'm not going too far off subject, but especially when you start talking about raising money for projects. I was in that space too with my television project, and it's a scary thing. It's some guy, I had typed up a proposal and sent it to one of the, just sight unseen, and sent it to one of the casinos in Vegas. It was, I think it was the MGM group. And to my surprise, they sent me the email back saying, hey, this looks good. We'd like to look at it a little bit longer. And I could not believe it, right? Good things, because I knew I could write, and I knew I could convey from my head on pen and paper very well. So I figured, this would work. And it did, because I was thinking it would. And then I was talking to someone who I was working with at the time. She was the headhunter. She was going to figure out how to get me the money. I was going to front load the whole thing with 7 figures to cover the hotel costs and still get done what I need to get done, and still, put a little in my pocket. And then I got nervous, and I said, well, what do I do, here? Because she's on one end saying, hey, we need a letter of intent or something so I can save us a space at the table for the money. And so I had just sent this letter to these people and didn't know what to do. So I called a city manager friend of mine. I said, hey, what do I do? He said, all you can do is just ask and see what they say. Just don't sound so needy and thirsty. And so I did, but while I was sending the email, my thoughts were full of fear and full of doubt. And the next email came back saying, you know what? It takes a lot of time and people to go through this and blah, blah, blah. And that was the end of that. I never answered. They never said no, but I got so frightened away by the response that I didn't, and that was, the last I heard of that was back in 2013, so like 8 years ago. And even when I first started driving for Lyft, I was telling someone about this, and he called me later after I dropped him off and gave me the phone number to those very same people that I had already sent the proposal to. He said, they know me, just tell them I sent you. And at that time, I was vacillating in and out of the negative and positive, and I never used it. You got me? So saying all that to say is, there's a responsibility when you come to get money, and one of the responsibilities are that you need to make sure you're thinking about whatever you're trying to do in a positive light. So when you start getting the results, you can continue to build on that. Okay? I hope I didn't give you too much. I kind of just went back down memory lane. But ultimately what I'm trying to say to you guys today is that, if you haven't already gotten it, is that money is energy. And we need to change the way we think about it. And we need to be firm as we start making our transition from the negative Jehovah's Witness mindset, from not being able to see into the future 5, 10, 15, 20 years. As we start to change our self-talk, as we start to change the way we see everything in the world has plenty to offer you. Not just in money, right? Just put that aside for right now. There are plenty other good things, great people that are out here that are waiting to come into your life, right? But they've been through some things too, and they're just not going to show up in somebody's life when they can get the vibe that they're not all the way ready for their arrival. They'll leave. I will. If I feel that you're not up to par, I'm out. It doesn't mean I'm perfect and I'm judging. I'm just saying I don't need no trouble. I've been through enough trouble. It's a lot to work from the negativity from the Jehovah's Witness organization to a place to where you can start thinking rationally. It's a lot, and it's not worth it. And so if you don't, start getting your mind right, those people will never come. That husband will never come. That wife will never come. The child, the house, the money, those things won't come. Or they'll come and you won't be ready and you'll lose it anyway, like I did my dad's money. My dad died for me to get that money. And that used to sit on me. I felt so guilty about it for so long that my dad had to die for me to have a little change to try and do something. And I failed. I think that's part of the reason why when that gentleman gave me that information, he called me and said, call these people. That's part of the reason I didn't go with it, is because it was that feeling of failure and fear of failing again. But those who really, who are born with no advantages, and I'm not talking about LeBron James, he's born 6'9". I'm talking about the average Joe who kept trying and trying and finally made it. Those are the people I relate to. Because if LeBron tells me just keep trying harder and harder, that doesn't really mean as much because you were born with an advantage. But that failure coming from, that story coming from somebody who's just an average Joe like me, telling me you have to fail to succeed, I wish I'd had that at the time. You know what I mean? So in any case, I hope my life story, or a bit of my life story, has helped you in some way. I hope, these discussions about changing your mind is helpful, because if I don't talk about this and you just, hopefully you will be successful. But more often than not, if you just run out from the Jehovah's Witness organization and get out here and try and dibble and dabble on the level that maybe you're not prepared to deal with. I wasn't prepared to deal with a multi-billion-dollar corporation who said yes to me. But I wasn't ready for the responsibility of how to respond. I wasn't ready to coordinate how we were going to attain that seed money. I wasn't ready for the X's and O's, the fine print where the devil is. Okay? So it's important that you get your mind right, to get your grind right, like Ice Cube say. In any case, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for me today. Like I said, I hope it was helpful. And until next week, April the 11th, keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, and your brains working. I'll see you next week.